Welcome to yet another edition of the program Governance and Development Conversation, proudly brought to you by African Network for Environment and Economic Justice with the support of the European Union, EU and IDEA. Today's program promises to be very informative, insightful, and of course educative. You owe us one responsibility, which is just to stay and enjoy all that we put together for this week's edition of the program. But let's set the foundation. As part of the implementation of the civil society advocacy to strengthen anti-corruption reforms in Nigeria, CASN project with the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance International IDEA under the rule of law and anti-corruption ROLAC being supported by the European Union, EU, ANEEJ'S held an engagement meeting with the leadership of the Independent Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, at the Commission's office in Abuja, talking about the Central Business District. The ANEEJ'S delegation was led by the Deputy Director, Leo Atakbo, in company of the Programs Manager, Innocent Edemaria, as well as the Programs Officer, Paul Odokara, and Admin Officer, Joy Igwe Okoye. The ICPC team was led by the Director of System Study and Review Department, Mr. Olusegun Adigun. Other members of the ICP team were Okoye Jude, Kupolati Kayode, Olatunde, Abugun Nefisa Umeka, and several others. We also had the likes of Mr. Muhammad Sani Kasim from ROLAC and International IDEA, who was also at the meeting. The objective of the engagement held was to present the report on the assessment of the management framework of anti-corruption and transparency units in MDAs, talking about Actus, and to discuss and explore possible areas of collaboration towards the implementation of the report recommendations. Welcoming the ANEEJ'S team, ICPC Chairman Dr. Musa Adamu Aliyu SAN, represented by the Director of System Study and Review Department, Mr. Olusegun Adigun, commended ANEEJ'S for the good work they have been doing in promoting transparency and accountability in the country. He stated Nigeria is not where it ought to be, despite the natural resources that the country is blessed with because of corruption. Mr. Adigun appreciated ANEEJ'S, adding that your work is adding value to the system, he quoted. And of course, he recalled that ICPC was also invited to the validation of the report, and they observed that the findings and recommendations were far-reaching and therefore promised that the Commission will implement the recommendations of the report. He stated further that the federal government had in 2021 mandated all ministries, departments and agencies to establish Actus, and that so far 600 MDAs have complied with the directive. And so let's take a look at what the ANEEJ'S representative said in that particular engagement with the ICPC team in Abuja, just to ensure that we'll have the issues in proper perspective and we can also understand the impact that ANEEJ'S is making. Coming from Leo Atakbo, who is the Deputy Director on behalf of the Executive Director, Reverend David Ogola, expressed delight to present the report on the assessment of Actus to the ICPC Chairman. Mr. Atakbo reiterated the strong belief of ANEEJ'S that the war on corruption should not be left to government alone, stressing that it's a core work that ANEEJ'S does to ensure transparency and accountability of elected officials. He commended the political will exhibited by ICPC Chairman in the course of the project, and especially for committing to the implementation of the recommendation of the report. Mr. Atakbo assured ICPC Chairman that ANEEJ'S would play her own part in the implementation of the recommendation of the report. The ANEEJ'S Director drew the attention of the Chairman to some sections of the recommendation for special consideration. All of that will form part of our conversation today on the program Governance and Development Conversation, coming to you courtesy of ANEEJ'S with the support of the European Union and idea. And today, we have in the studio with me the Deputy Executive Director of African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, Dr. Leo Atakpo, who led the ANEEJ'S delegation to have that engagement with the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Commission on the Actus project, which basically has to do with the Anti-Corruption and Transparency Unit that is supposed to be in MDAs. Dr. Leo, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Dr. Sonny.
I must say that was a very fruitful engagement with ICPC.
Oh, sure.
What informed this engagement? Give us the foundation.
Yeah, recall that in previous editions of this program, we have talked about the report that we developed at the ANEEJ level. We worked with several stakeholders to come up with an assessment, of the Actus, their performance since they came on stream, in 2021. Okay. ICPC itself, also has 3 core work areas. One of them is public enlightenment. The other is to prevent corruption, okay, and so on and so forth. So we believed that ICPC should not be left in that arduous responsibility, given the humongous, nature and dimension of corruption in this country. And so we felt that the core of corruption, is procurement. Particularly the public sector corruption is in the area of procurement. And all of these happen within the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies. Okay. And so with the establishment of Actus, it was really important for us to really take a dive, about 5 years into their establishment. How have they fared? What are their challenges? What has been the progress made? And then we decided to commission that assessment, and then the findings. We talked about it, and then we mentioned to you that we will also reach out, to ICPC, and other stakeholders to do some kind of validation of our findings. Okay. And we had that validation workshop here in Benin, and we invited ICPC, the chairman, graciously sent a high-powered delegation, to participate in that program. Even the ICPC zonal office here in Benin, they were all part of the meeting, and it was great, Okay. And our findings, were properly put together, and then we invited the MDAs themselves, the Actus, their chairman, from select, MDAs. And then we all came together and we agreed on the findings, which we took now to ICPC national headquarters in Abuja. And on arrival, the chair of ICPC, Dr. Adamu, was really, really prepared, had you can always see the political will, to do justice to their work. Before we even arrived, they had even read the report, and they appreciated the level of work that went into, the assessment of Actus. And they were in agreement with the entire findings. There was no aspect, of the findings that ICPC disagreed with. Okay. They were in full agreement, with the findings of ANEEJ, in that document. And they also told us in clear language that they were going to move on, in terms of implementation of the recommendations contained therein. And we felt some sense of fulfillment.
Okay, if I may just interject, what were the key findings in this Actus report?
Yes, majorly we found that most of the Actus were established without proper office accommodation for the chairman and the members of the Actus within most of the MDAs. We also found out that there were no budgetary provisions for their operations. So when you don't have a space, where you operate from, and you do not also have the funding, for you to operate, you are as good as, dislocated, to function. Okay. And then where they also exist, where the committees existed, we also noted that there was this difficulty in they taking up issues that they find,
with the management of the MDAs,
to further, for action.
Okay.
And that in itself, really calls for a question. I hope we are not setting up all of this for for the fun of it. So we expected that there should be some kind of powers, given to those committees.
Okay.
If you see, it's not just if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
If you see something, do something. And something that can, shake the table. You know what I mean? Such that whoever is involved, including the boss of the, of the committee members, you should also answer some questions.
Okay.
If not with the ICPC, also before the court of law.
Okay.
So
now
those are some of our findings.
You talked, I think, from the report we gave in the background to this conversation. You have about, is it 600
MDAs.
such MDAs that have complied?
Yes.
But in the report, with the compliance that we have seen, it looks like it's just in name. It's just in the name, not in the practicality of what is expected of them in terms of having the offices and then having the right budgetary allocation to enable them to function. That's the point you're making.
Yeah, not entirely,
Okay.
but to say that those were some of the observations in some of the MDAs, not entirely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some were properly established,
Yeah.
but there were also some
Those
other
properly established, are they functioning in line with the mandate that is expected of them in the fight against corruption?
Yes, some of them are actually, doing what is expected of them. They are properly constituted, and they are just going about their job. But we also found some underlying constraints, which will even require the amendment of the ICPC Act, particularly that section that provides for the establishment of Actus, to also empower the Actus, to take further their findings beyond, just mention to the ICPC.
Okay, when you say Actus, some people will be asking, what do you mean
anti-corruption units, within the
MDAs?
Yes. The whole idea, is to prevent corruption from occurring within the ministries, departments, and agencies.
Okay.
So, so they bring in some key departments, together, some individuals within these MDAs to look at the procurement processes, for instance, and then identify, potential areas, that corruption can happen.
Okay.
And then raise the flag, the red flag.
All right.
Yeah.
If you just join us, it's Governance and Development Conversation on ITV. The program is proudly brought to you by African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ, with the support of the European Union and IDEA. And today on the program, the focus is on the recent visit and engagement with the Independent Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, by ANEEJ'S management team led by our guest here in the studio. And the purpose of that visit is to look at the work in progress in terms of the impact made so far in the Actus project, which has to do with anti-corruption and transparency units that you're supposed to have in ministries, departments, and agencies to checkmate the perennial problem of corruption. So it is more or less like an anti-corruption platform to ensure that MDAs comply with procurement processes and reduce corruption, as it were. When we return after this break, we'll be looking at the implementation of Actus in Edo State and the way forward. Join us again on the program Governance and Development Conversation after this break. Don't go away. Development certainly is a collective responsibility, and we must continue to see it from that perspective. And if we all play it the way it ought to be, like the civil society is doing, like ANEEJ is doing, then of course we have a better society and we can actually bring development closer to the people. Once again, I want to thank you for creating the time to be part of the program this week. This week's edition of Governance and Development Conversation brought to you by ANEEJ with the support of EU and IDEA. Comrade Leo Atakbo is still here. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
What is the level of workability, implementation of Actus in Edo State? Because I heard you say a while ago that the conference or the meeting that took place here involved key stakeholders, including ICPC. And after that meeting, the report was put together and sent to Abuja to, of course, have that engagement. So what is the level here in Edo State as it relates to Actus?
Yes, one of the key demands we took to Abuja was that the ICPC national headquarters should support, the implementation of Actus at the subnational level, which of course includes Edo State. And graciously, the ICPC even assured ANEEJ that they were going to do a letter, a follow-up letter, to the Edo State Governor, Comrade Monday Okpebholo, Senator Monday Okpebholo, to also get him, to have the buy-in into this lofty idea. Because again, if you look at the national anti-corruption strategy, that's a broad, policy document that all persons in the country working around the issue of anti-corruption, will help to facilitate the implementation. So that is the guidance, what guides everyone in the implementation. And there is provision in the NACS document for subnational governments' participation, in the war against corruption. And so we believe strongly that this is a very good opportunity for the Edo State government, to key into establishment of Actus amongst its MDAs. Because if you want to ensure transparency and accountability in your government, it is something that you should embrace willingly, And the various MDAs, they participated, the civil society organizations that were invited participated, and then we believe that we need to take this forward. Okay. And that's why we're talking about also the need for the Edo State government to put in place something like the Edo State transparency and accountability strategy. A draft of that document was prepared by the previous administration, which we believe strongly that such a document can also be helpful. Perhaps it can just be revised, a transparency and accountability strategy that will guide government, in putting in place all the systems, in place that will help prevent, corruption within government operations. Because government every day is awarding contracts, every day government is doing business, different business, and then involving so many, contractors. Okay. So it is important that all of these measures are put in place so that government, will have value for money for whatever projects that it embarks upon. Okay. And the era, government should also help, itself, by ensuring that the right policy is put in place. And ETSIAS, for instance, for us, provides that opportunity for the Edo State government to, deal firmly with the issue of corruption by putting in place such a policy that will guide the various MDAs, in the way they operate. Okay. And then for them to be able to establish units such as the Actus that the ICPC establishes, across.
You talked about funding of Actus as a major challenge that this report has identified and presented. Yes. And you also reached out to the ICPC to look at that. Yes. How realistically possible is this? How workable is this against the background that these Actus that are supposed to be in MDAs, they are more or less drawn from the same system to oversight what they are doing to reduce corruption? How feasible is that in terms of the funding? If they are funding themselves, as it were, will it not undermine the, how do I put it now, undermine that sort of objectivity and, that is needed to be able to drive such a project of this nature? No.
It is just, it is just as various MDAs get their own funding to do their own work. Same way, the Actus, the national budget process should accommodate them to have budgetary provisions, to enable them discharge.
But it's saying that he who pays pays the piper
just like the
tune.
ICPC itself. ICPC is also funded through the budget process, the national budget process. So in the same way, the EFCC, all of them, all agencies of government, they get their funding from the federal government. The same way, you should fund them. You don't starve them of fund and expect them to perform magic or to pull out water from stones.
But don't you think that's a challenge to the functionality of Actus?
Yeah, it's a challenge that we have already identified. And we are
what I mean by it being a challenge is this. Actus is within a ministry or a department or an agency. Actus is supposed to get its funds from the source, just like the ministry and department. Isn't that a challenge? Where is the independence, really? Of Actus, based on the fact that he who pays the piper dictates the tune, as it were.
That is why we advocate that there should be some kind of independent stream of funding funded, directly to the Actus, in the various departments and agencies of government. So that way you will be able to insulate their work, from the other organs of the ministry or the department or agency.
So what are your projections?
Or interference, undue interference.
What are your projections in the overall conversation, looking at the impact made so far and what has been done based on your report? What's your assessment in terms of the projections?
Yes, my assessment is that there will be some progress made, because of the kind of political will we are getting from the ICPC itself. Because one thing is for you to have a problem, the other is for you to recognize that you have a problem. Because if you recognize you have a problem, it is that problem half solved. Then what you now do is to devise means to addressing those challenges. So that is the next step now, to evolve ways and means to address those challenges that have been identified.
All right. Well, our time is up, Comrade Leo Ataku, but it's been a delight having you here as always to engage some of these issues on governance and development. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's our package today. And for this week on Governance and Development Conversation, brought to you by African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ, with the support of the EU and, of course, IDEA. We'll come your way same time next week with our fresh edition of the program. Till then, bye for now.